Thank you very much, and good evening, and welcome to the show. A question that I'm continually asked is, what is my ambition? And the funny thing about having an ambition, as soon as you have an ambition, another ambition comes. And my ambition is to be able to earn enough money to pay the taxes that I wouldn't have to pay if I hadn't realized my ambition in the first place. And the question people ask me, why do I twitch when I sit here? Why do I do this and things like that? Because sitting under the lights, after a while, I get terribly hot, and everything begins to ride up. I'm not joking you. So when I'm doing that, I'm not tucking my shirt down, I'm trying to push my knickers back into the place. The Irish, as a nation, people, we have a different attitude to life than the English. For example, you get the Englishman driving in Ireland in a long car, and he stops a fellow who's sitting on the fence, and he said, "Excuse me, could you tell me where Tabacari is?" And he said, "Ah, sir, it's about 12 miles down the road. But in a car that long, you should be able to do it in about 9 miles. And the Englishman said, "What do you do?" He said, "What do you mean, sir? What do I do?" He said, "What's your job?" He said, "I don't have a job." He said, "You mean you don't work?" He said, "I don't work, sir." He said, "You mean you do nothing?" He said, "I do nothing." He said, "You should work. You should get off your bottom and work." He said, "Why?" He said, "So you would get a lot of money." He said, "What would I do with the money?" He said, "You would save it." He said, "What would I do if I saved it?" He said, "You would save it, and when you're 65, you would retire. And then you would have all that money." He said, "What would I do?" He said, "You do nothing." He said, "I'm doing nothing now." The two fellows talking, and one says, where's Sean? I haven't seen him for years." "Ah," he said, "well, he was walking down the road and he saw a big sign which says, 'Drink Canada Dry,' so we went." I was in a bar. I don't often go into bars, but I was in a bar. And I said to a fellow, I said, "How do you know when you're drunk?" He said, "I don't remember." I said, "Well, how do you know when you're getting drunk?" He said, when you and your friend become 4 people." I said, "I'm by myself." Today we're perhaps more affluent than we've ever been in man's history. And the strange thing about man, no matter what he has or how much of it, he wants more. And if you think it's bad nowadays, what do you think it's going to be like in about 50 years' time? Can you imagine the year 2020 and the shop steward talking to his members? And he said, "All right, lads, I've had a chat with the management. They've agreed to our demands. A rise of £35 a week. Bringing our basic weekly wage to £352 per week. One condition, we got to work on a Wednesday." And a voice from the back said, "What, every bleeding Wednesday?" But if we have all this leisure, what are we going to do with it? Fishing provides an outlet for 3 of man's basic needs. It fulfills his need to relax, fulfills his need to hunt, and it fulfills his need to tell bigger lies than anybody else. You get the lady turns to her husband, she said, "How many fish did you catch last week?" He said, 6. She said, "I thought so. That fishmonger has charged us for 8. I get a one-armed fisherman who said, "I caught a fish. There's no doubt that women are basically different than men. I don't mean physically, I mean mentally. They have a completely different outlook to men. For example, you get the man talking to a very beautiful lady and he said, I think you're rather beautiful. And I'm going to buy you a drink." She said, "You're not." And he said, "When you finish that drink, I'm going to buy you another drink." She said, "You are not." And he said, "I'm going to take you out to a large champagne supper." She said, "You are not." And he said, "I'm going to take you dancing." She said, "You are not." He said, "I'm going to take you back to my apartment, soft light, sweet music, nightcaps, and I'm going to make love to you." She said, "You are not." And he said, "I am not going to take any precautions." She said, "You will." I tell you, the men in the room tonight, I'll tell you the thing, never lie to a woman. Always tell her the truth. You'll never get away with lies. Walk in and say, I've been with a girl. I was in a bar, and there was a mutual attraction, and it all happened, and we went home, and I spent the night with her. And she will say, don't be silly, darling, I knew you'd been playing poker with your friends all night. And never creep in at home if you're late. Never, ever creep in. Don't kind of drive the car up quietly, put the key in, take your shoes off, creep up the stairs, turn the bedroom door. As soon as you turn that door on, the light on, you're in trouble. Where have you been? Drive the car up at about 90 miles an hour. Slam the door. Boom. Open the front door, slam it. Boom. Go up the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. Open the bedroom door, slam it open. Turn all the lights on. Look at her and say, you look more seductive than you've ever looked in your life. And I guarantee you, all you'll hear is... Good book says, as you sow, so shall you reap. And as you gathered, I've got a garden of weeds. If you're good in life, you'll go to heaven. If you go to heaven, they'll give you wings and a harp, which to me is hell, because I can't stand heights and the harp music. God. When an Irishman dies, go to heaven, St. Peter says, where do you come from? He said, Ireland. He said, well, not make us Jew for one. The fellow dies, and St. Peter said to him, he said, what did you do in life? He said, I was a miser. I hoarded all of my money. I was a miser. I used to count it gleefully every night. And St. Peter said, did you ever do a kind act? He said, yes. Once. I gave a penny to a blind boy. Can I come in? And St. Peter said, hang on a second. Gabriel! There's a miser here. He wants to come in. He said he gave him a penny to a blind boy once. What'll I do? And Gabriel says, give him tuppence and tell him to go to hell. The oldest profession in the world is soldiering. I don't know who you are, sir, but you've got a filthy mind. They say that old soldiers never die. They just fade away. That's ridiculous. I've never heard of an old soldier. I've heard of old brigadiers, old generals, old field marshals, but I've never heard of an old soldier. And you get the chap, young officer, talking to his troops, and then, we are going to go over the top at 2200 hours. And when we get out the top and meet the enemy, I'm afraid the some of us are going to be lose some arms and legs and chunky baggies dead. But I want you to remember, whatever happens here today, chaps, I am not afraid. The sergeant steps out and he said, what is that, sir? He said, I'm not gay. You get the sarcastic sergeant talking to a new recruit. And he said, do you realize that you are the only one out of 35 men who are out of step? Every one of them is out of step except you. He said, well, don't tell me, tell them, they're the people. I get the chap talking to the soldiers before the offensive. And he said, I want you to remember that we are up against far superior odds today, but I also want you to remember that we are the British Army. We have defeated far greater forces than we will meet today. I would hazard a guess to say that we are outnumbered today approximately 4-1. But I want you to remember that we are the British Army. And it all happens. Hell breaks loose. Cannons, guns, shells, aeroplanes, tanks. And the officer is dashing from one point to another, and there's a little Irish soldier leaning up against a tree having a smoke. What are you doing? He said, I'm smoking, sir. He said, I know you're smoking. Why aren't you in the battle? He said, I've killed my 4. But there was a time when opposing armies would line up against one another. And under a flag of truce, the opposing officers would meet and argue as to which army was about to fire the first shot, which you must admit is a very civilized way of doing things. I mean, if we're going to kill people, there's no need to do it like animals. There is no such fright, no such fear as sounds of war upon the ear.
I don't like it, Sergeant.
Oh, don't you, sir? I'll change it.
As you see, gentlemen, we are here. The enemy are there. If there is an enemy offensive, I expect his tanks to break through right here.